Hello and welcome to this week's program of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. Each week we connect with and hear from fascinating and inspirational speakers, often with a message focused on our interests in innovation, entrepreneurship, and education. As a Rotary Club, we look for ways these programs might foster new approaches to improving communities near and far. We're glad that you've joined us and hope that you'll enjoy how we are exploring how technology can serve the business of service to others. Now, I'll hand it over to Rushton Hurley for the introduction of our speaker.
Thank you, Cecilia. It is a pleasure to be able to introduce everyone to Chad Hooker. Chad has been in Half Moon Bay here in California for over 4 decades, and he ran a construction business there. And what we're going to talk to him about today is Pacific Coast Dream Machines and how these kinds of events can be great for our community. He's going to tell us how the event that has become a really big whopping deal in Half Moon Bay has benefited a particular senior health program there, and hopefully everyone will be able to walk away not just excited about that program, but also about how they might do something similar in their communities in order to raise funds for great causes. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Chad. Chad, welcome to the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley.
Rushton, thank you. This is a pleasure to be here. I'd like to back up a little here and talk somewhat about the Coastside Adult Day Health Center in Half Moon Bay. I joined the board of directors there in 1984. This is a nonprofit organization that provides day support services for the functionally disabled in our community, primarily seniors. These are people, many of whom helped build the community here in Half Moon Bay, and they need our help at this time. So in 1989, when I happened to be president of the board, we undertook an effort to establish a fundraiser of an adequate scale to build what we called the Guardian Fund. The aim of this fund was to backstop the organization's annual budgeting process. Given the fluid nature of various revenue streams to nonprofits in the senior care and healthcare sectors, the board's intention was to accumulate an account that was adequate to bridge those inconsistencies. So we looked for how to come up with an event, and we settled on the Coastside Adult Day Health Center, settled on the Pacific Coast Dream Machines. The big question, of course, was what that event should be. A local businessman and community contributor named Bob Sens had the wild idea for this Dream Machines thing. And it's a car show that features every type and vintage of car, and also airplanes, motorcycles, drag boats, steam engines, planes, helicopter and airplane rides, food, music. It's anything you can think of that would be your dream machine. And it's a family event as well, kids attractions. And just a really fun day. We do this the last Sunday in April each year. So Bob drove this idea forward, perhaps to give you an idea of what it could be. It'd be interesting to show some slides. These are stationary shots of the vehicles and airplanes that show up there and some of the things that go on. So Bob drove this idea forward, and by it started in 1990. That was our first year, so we've just done our 28th year. By 1994, the event was in the black, and it has grown ever since. I worked at various tasks through those 28 years and became chairman of the event in 2011. Bob worked on the event every year, even after retiring, and he is now our chairman emeritus. The initiation and building of the Pacific Coast Dream Machines event required many things, but the single most important was a deeply committed individual who would take the time and demonstrate the enthusiasm to make it succeed. Often the effort required for a successful scale of a fundraiser for a nonprofit is seen as just too difficult when writ large. So a nonprofit's board may set the bar too low, and the event won't meet the organization's goals or needs. With the Dream Machines, just the opposite occurred. The founder, Bob Sens, envisioned a big deal, so he set out to create just that, and it is. He knew the importance of reaching the right politicians and bureaucrats to get the venue. For us, it's a small local airport here in Half Moon Bay, and the support for permits, the participation of the sheriff's office, the CHP, getting local companies to donate whatever services they could. For us, that includes things like fencing, outhouses, sign making, sponsorships, advertising in the events brochure, donating products for sale to the public, and so on. He went to car clubs, auto and racing shops, tractor museums, pilots association meetings. He worked hard to get the participants to bring their dream machines to the show. using his leadership and his reputation in the community, he reached directly into our small town for the pool of volunteers needed to pull it off. This level of leadership is hard to find, but it's crucial to the success of building an event. If you want to build an event, you've got to have somebody who really takes this leadership seriously. Dream Machines is now a thoroughly established premier local event and an anticipated regional show. It's promoted as, quote, the coolest show on earth, unquote. It draws about 12 to 15,000 spectators each year. It's expensive to put it on, but we net about $80,000 to $100,000 for the Coastside Adult Day Health Center. That variation in what we net seems to be based more on the weather than any other single factor. So the Guardian Fund has grown with the event. The center is on a solid financial footing as a result, and it's had the resources to grow in its service program, move into a new, larger facility, and increase its outreach. The key event idea was crucial to the success of the Dream Machines, as could be said of any big fundraiser. Keep in mind, most regions have the capacity to support something new and exciting and different. That's not to say the ideas come easily, but the first foundational concept here is to think big, to avoid limiting yourselves in your considerations. Some ideas like tractor dancing may be more regional. Some like pumpkin chucking or surfing contests belong in specific areas. But some, like a demolition derby or a car show or an air show with military flyovers, are hailed everywhere and enjoyed across the country. I'm sure there are many other good ideas for fundraisers. So the questions you must ask yourself are something like, what strong event could you put together that would be popular in your area and also possible to do? List the elements of feasibility here and address each one honestly and thoroughly. Another question is, who is that enthusiastic leader who will not tire of this project? This is a question that requires unwavering dedication. This position and this job requires that. Somebody's got to have boundless energy and enthusiasm, available time, and maybe even some money. What team of dedicated volunteers will support and back the leader and keep turning the crank year after year to make the event grow and improve and be a successful fundraiser? Another question is, where can you raise the initial seed money it will take to start something big and to pursue it to profitability, which is likely to take a couple of years? A lot of hard work to get there. So obviously these are only some of the issues that need to be addressed in organizing your initial thoughts and planning. But the real message in any of this is that communities want their important and supportive nonprofits to succeed and deliver on their mission statements. They know it takes vision and leadership to start a nonprofit around certain ideas and goals. They will generally help support the event that can keep that nonprofit functioning if it's a fun event. Many on the Coastside where I live had no idea what the Coastside Adult Day Health Center even was, but they certainly get what Dream Machines is about, and they come every year and they help where they can. Once your ideas and a basic plan come together, form a steering committee and look to your community for team leaders to take on certain responsibilities and tasks. For us, our team leaders do separate tasks like show car parking, spectator parking, admission gates, publicity. We've hired that out professionally now. That's a major part of the project. Signs, managing the aircraft ramp, field setup and tear down, electrical, stage, music, food, generators, alcohol, garbage, recycling. These functions are repetitive and can be tedious, but they are each very important to the success of the event. Team leaders get volunteers and organize their responsibilities, and that's the volunteers. You got to get a lot of those. We have about 200 people volunteer to help us with Dream Machines each year. Rustin, I could talk a great deal about this event, and perhaps it'd be more productive if I answer some questions, if there are any.
Absolutely, Chad. Fantastic stuff. I mean, it's so cool to see all of the different vehicles, you know, that are part of it and all. But what really kind of strikes me right off the bat is how deeply the community seems to have bought into the idea of the show. Like, it becomes a point of pride for the community. To what degree was it like Mr. Sens's kind of thing of, you need to know about this effort, the Adult Day Health Center, in order to understand what we're trying to do? How does that story go back and forth with getting the community to buy into doing something really big?
Actually, that was not as significant a link to it as you might think. Bob had the idea for this show, and his certainty was that the financial side would be managed entirely by the board of directors of the Coastside Adult Day Health Center. The Pacific Coast Dream Machines does not have its own board. We operate as a steering committee that's a subcommittee to the Adult Day Health Center board. Bob knew that the money would be managed that way, and he brought the enthusiasm and leadership to create the event, recognizing that you could spend an awful lot of time trying to tell people what the event was going to be for, what the money was going to be for. But first you had to have an event and have the money. Let's make it happen. So he just went at it. And he did not take his foot off the gas. He just really put a lot into it for quite a number of years. But 4 years into it, he turned a profit. Not a big profit, but it stopped losing money. And now, as I said, in the last dozen years, we've been bringing in $80,000 to $100,000 a year for the nonprofit in town.
Now, the idea of being able to have the kind of patience for a lot of people, I think, to understand, hey, this is not something that's going to turn a profit in the first few years. Instead, we want to get to that point. Was it hard keeping people on board during those first few years?
I would say the volunteers involved in the show, it was not hard to keep people on board because there's just this there's this obvious coolness to this show that you get out there in the field and you go, there should be another 10,000 people here. This is just too cool. And you do it for a couple of years and it begins to grow because it's a cool show. And that's the important thing, is to get the right idea for your fundraiser so that people want to be there. You're not trying to drag anybody in there by their toenails. It's show up because you're going to love doing this, and bring your kids because they're going to love seeing it. And then, you got people walking around there who just, every person there points at a car and goes, I had that ride in high school. Or that ride was built 30 years before I went to high school. There's some great stuff there. And people get enthused about that. Machine shows and car shows they're a big draw. This is the kind of thing you could pull off elsewhere if you knew the right car clubs and had the right organizational skills to really reach people and make it happen. It has been important that it be linked to a nonprofit and that the nonprofit component be very apparent to people, because, there's a bit of an inconvenience to a community. There's a lot of traffic, and there's, we do military airplane flyovers, and there's noise to adjacent residents and that kind of thing. And if you were doing that so you could make a bunch of money that you were going to take home with you, people wouldn't, they wouldn't tolerate it, and they wouldn't want to support it. But it is a good and well-known local nonprofit, much better known now because of Dream Machines than it was before Dream Machines was founded.
Cool. Cecilia, how about you?
Yes. Well, so I have a couple of questions, but I'll start with one that probably a lot of people, when they see this, will want to know, which is the revenue model. Is it just admissions? Is it admissions and parking? Is it food? Is it,
Okay. Well, because our venue is an airfield, that means it has a great deal of open grass space between taxiways and runways and so on. We charge an admission at the main gate that includes a parking fee, and then people also, we charge $50 to show car display people. So they pay $50 to show a car, and that lets two people in the gate with the car, or it's $25 admission at the gate per person, and we do not charge for parking. And there's a lot involved in that too. Spectator parking stuff. Everything needs to be done safely and cleanly, and that's a big trick that I didn't mention actually in my discussion here. You've got to organize what you're doing in a way that it's safe, because if you're driving a nonprofit event of any kind and somebody gets hurt or there's some other problem, it can put an end to your event in a big hurry. So we really work hard at that. So the revenue model, once people are on the field, they buy food, beer, wine. We have commercial vendors there who pay a fee to put up a booth. And frankly, per square foot of space, you make more money putting up a tent with a commercial vendor in it than you do parking two cars in that same amount of space. But people don't come for commercial vendors. And it's critical to be very careful who you let in. As soon as you're going to have a crowd of people someplace, the distributor of vinyl windows wants to show up and set up his tent, and that's not necessarily what people have come to see. So our commercial vendors they sell car related items and toys for kids that are related to cars and airplanes, and shirts with logos on them, motorcycle bits and dragster parts and Holly carburetors and things like that. And these are the commercial vendors we utilize and allow onto the field because it's related to the show. We need to be cautious about that. And as the show has gone on, it's grown in other ways as well. The guy got in touch with us a couple of years ago, and he had a group of friends. They collected vintage police cars. So now each year when the show begins, these guys meet at the El Granada Grade School, which is about a mile away. And at about 10 o'clock in the morning, it's lights and sirens on these old police cars that go from 1950s on up. And these guys come in as a parade into the field with all their old sirens wailing away. It's like something out of a Broderick Crawford movie. It's really fun to see. And those are the kinds of things that just materialize as the event grows. So that's been fun.
And do you have corporate sponsorships? Or
We've worked toward corporate sponsorships, but our event has reached about a 12 to 15,000 crowd maximum. So it's difficult to do. You get companies on the scale of Safeway on up, and they're looking for much bigger crowds than that. Yeah. But we have a lot of local sponsorships, and they range from restaurants to providers of services and such here on the coast. The local newspaper prints a brochure, I guess I could call it, that goes out with the newspaper and that we hand out at the gate in goodie bags to all of the participants that bring show cars. And it's filled with ads that are sold for the newspaper, and most of them are about the event. It's well supported that way as well.
Great. And so how many vehicles of all types do you attract there?
This year, that's an interesting question. This year, it rained for about 5 minutes at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the count of people showing or arriving as spectators on Harley Davidsons and so on was way off because it was that kind of a day. It was overcast in the morning. And the cars that are sort of, bucket tees with no roof, a lot of those things stayed home. It's a lot of work to clean a car like that. And they didn't come out in the rain. So we had about, I think it was between 760 and 780 cars, somewhere right in that range. Frequently, we have over 1,000. And if it's a nice day out there, everybody shows up and they're wandering around in their spring wearing, drinking beer, listening to great music. We have a stage with 3 or 4 bands on it during the day, and a food court, and people are just wandering around having a good time and seeing the cars. The military flyovers are very stirring. Those things, those World War II fighters come in next to a bomber and just fly low right over the field, and all the little hairs in the back of your neck stand up. It's really, really cool.
And how many drag boats do you get? That the drag boat made my heart flutter because I had an uncle who owned one, and we had many summers of fun riding and driving in that thing.
I'll bet you did. We don't get many. Some years there have been 3 or 4. Some years there's only 1. But again, if that's your dream machine and you got it sitting there on a trailer and it's something to look at, people bring it out. The photograph you saw there in that video is a drag boat that was there this year. It's got about a 1,900 horsepower Hemi in it, and that guy starts that thing up, people just come running. They want to hear that engine run. And the same with the dragsters. There's some nitromethane dragsters there. People start their motors. Part of the event is what we call a cackle fest. The cackle fest happens 3 times a day at 10 and noon and 2. And the encouragement is for the show cars to start their engines. And, if you think a 600 horse V8 with some serious carburation on it is something to look at, wait till you hear it run. And people want to hear them run. So that's a lot of fun, too.
So I am wondering 2 things. First of all, the people who are taking part in the health care program, so they're at the center during the day. Do they participate in any way with how the message goes out or in any of the events that take place?
The events, no. As far as the message goes, we have among our elements of publicity and photographs that are on the field and information at our information booth. We have photographs of the participants at the center. Many of these people are functionally limited. in a number of ways, and a lot of them are very advanced in their years. This is not a senior center where you go to play canasta during the afternoon. This is an adult day health program that helps people stay in their homes. Many of these people have caregivers. They live with their adult children or something like that, and their children go off to work, and they come to the adult day health center during the day, where there is a nurse and a speech therapist and an occupational therapist and a hot meal, and they get medications monitored and personal and medical care issues addressed, and it just helps them stay out of an institutionalized facility. So it's an excellent service for the community in that regard.
Absolutely. Now, do the schools get involved in some way? Do kids at schools create things that are part of the event in some way, or is that kind of not a piece of how the outreach has happened?
Interestingly enough, there is a bit of a participation by the high school. High school seniors are required to do some community service work in order to be able to graduate from high school. So we have the community seniors up there. A lot of them help late in the day with literally cleanup. The wind blows out here on the coast, and all the trash winds up out there on the field at one point or another. The kids help collect that. We used the kids quite a bit over the years for assistance with spectator parking. But with the advent of cell phones, a bunch of high school kids standing out on the field is a little bit like mercury in a saucer. They all sort of congregate together and stand there and play with their phones, and the cars don't get parked. So we've redirected how we use the kids, but we definitely get high school kids out there giving us a hand. And young input on a thing like this is really important. You need to have a constant turnover of your volunteers. I mean, there are a lot of us who are in our 70s now. We've been doing this thing from the beginning of it 28 years ago, and we need some young blood. And that's a critical piece of keeping an event going is bringing in the new staff on an ongoing basis and teaching people how to do it and get it right. Another really important piece of it is the vibe. You just people have got to want to be there, and you're encouraging them to be having a great time and thanking them for showing up from the moment they get off the highway and onto the airfield. And everybody's smiling, and you're just trying to have a good time. And it's that kind of an event and that kind of a day. It's just a lot of fun.
So that's actually a question or specifically the question of how to get younger people involved in helping run things. It's a question that a lot of Rotary clubs face as well. Mm-hmm. Have you done anything in particular that the group has decided, hey, this is a really good way to engage our 20 and 30 somethings and 40 somethings, in the community and in the event?
That's been tough. We had some success this year in working with a couple of local church groups that have group meetings on, a Tuesday or Wednesday night or something like that. They've got a youth group at the church, and these are groups that sometimes get involved in missionary projects and, go off to a country in South America and do some work down there. And they get their arms around the idea that they can collectively actually get something serious done and that they can contribute. And they like that organizational component of it. We had a great deal of help this year from a couple of groups, 2 different churches. And it was very helpful to get them on the field and begin sort of teaching them, do this element of the lead-in work, and then next year we'll be moving into a different phase of this. And they seem to enjoy the work. I mean, it's a fun thing, so it's fun to help. So last question for me then. I mean, when we look at what has, what we've looked at is this thing that has become called the coolest show on earth, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just a tagline that people are going to get excited about. I mean, why wouldn't you love that, right? Exactly. When you think about the dual piece, you talked quite a bit about Sens being, this guy who had this passion and he kind of bring it, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year to this project. There probably was 1 or 2 or 6 other people who were these kind of organizational gurus who would be like, we're gonna mark all this down. Here are the people who've done the food things before. Here's like how we got the step by step on that, things like that. Did you have those people as well who were helping kind of make the event something that could be replicated year in, year out? Absolutely. As the first couple of years, the show was about cars and airplanes, and then as it grew to having music and food and more people there, we were able to sort of start taking some of these tasks out of Bob's hands and organizing them ourselves. That's what I meant when I described team leaders. And it's really critical to have people who are good at these things. You know, you'll have somebody say, oh, well, yeah, I'll run that part of it there. And they've never done it before, and they don't have a feel for what that particular element of it is. And it can be a very important element, like getting the food vendors right, or getting music right. Oh, I know, my uncle had a band. Oh, wait a minute. That's not what we're looking for. You got to have somebody who knows who the music people are and really knows what it's about and can organize good quality bands and music and get them to volunteer, so you're not spending a lot of money. And we just don't spend money on things that we don't have to. We get as much volunteer work done as we can. And still, it's a very expensive event to put on. We spend $150,000.
Well, it sounds like you guys have raised all kinds of funds to support the center over the last 30 plus years, and kudos to you. I'll wind down our thing and give you the last word. But for everyone who has taken part in our meeting this week and watched this program and learned something about Pacific Coast Dream Machines and how to make a project work, to raise a lot of money for a good cause in the community, thank you for joining us. We try every week to bring people who have these kinds of wonderful stories to our club to be able to share and hopefully inspire other people to see what they can do to make a difference in their communities. Make sure to let us know you were here in the attendance survey just below this part. And then also in the discuss section, let us know what you thought of the program, what you thought of the meeting, and feel free to reply to what other people have put there as well. We love seeing those kinds of discussions happen. So with that, I'd like to pass it back to our speaker to give us a final word before we close the recording.
First, and I guess my final word would be to someone who has an interest in a nonprofit trying to put together a fundraiser. Organize your ideas, organize your crew, and then just make it happen. Just push hard and focus it around the idea that if it's a good time, people are going to support it. So I wish you luck on that note. It's good luck. It's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Good service is good fun for sure. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
All right.